Namaste, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. This is Dr. David Frawley, Vamadeva Shastri. I'm very happy to be with you for this conference whose topic is to dissolve caste consciousness. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I am in my mountain retreat center in the southern Rocky Mountains of the United States. This is a very important topic of what they call caste. I've addressed it in a number of articles and statements over the last several decades, so it's nothing new. I've examined it more on the India context. Now we have an issue more so relative to the United States, Britain, and also the Western world in general. It is very important that the Hindu community, not only in India, but also internationally, addresses these issues because they are issues that have caused fundamental distortions and misinterpretations of Hindu Dharma. They were the basis of colonial denigration of Hindu way of life and justification for foreign rule, and they've also been used as a justification for conversion, asking Hindus to convert to a caste-free religion. So this is a long-term issue we must carefully address. So let us put this in a little bit of a background here. Now, caste is a Western term. Caste as a term was invented, I believe, by the Portuguese or used by the Spanish. And it was there dividing people by the color of the skin, where you had the intermarriage of the Europeans and the native people, as, for example, in Mexico and Brazil. I believe they had as many as 18 castes in Mexico. There is also a more long-term idea or social organization we find fairly widely throughout the world, a division of society into several strata, sometimes called caste, which were often the priestly group, the nobility, the merchants, the common people, and so forth. And we find such social divisions in all the societies of the world, and they were very highly emphasized and very strong in the British Empire and in Great Britain itself. The power of the royalty has, of course, gone down. But you could say that the colonial rulers were a ruling caste judged by the color of their skin. So in the Indian context, there was the projection of this idea of caste upon the Indian society and what was called the Varna system. Varna system refers to a very general organization of society into four groups: Brahman as the priestly educated group, Kshatriya as the ruling political and military and aristocracy, Vaishya as more the dominant merchant group, and Shudra, those who were involved in service occupations. Sometimes another group was there as so-called outcasts or untouchables who were not involved or kept outside of the social stratification. But I want to put this into a broader context, and that is the context of the Vedas. They often look back to a text called Purusha Sukta for defining the caste system. It occurs in the Rig Veda itself. And the Purusha Sukta talks about, first of all, Purusha Vedam Sarvam. Everything is this one being, consciousness, Purusha or Atman, which is like the cosmic person overall. And in manifestation in the human realm, that person or Purusha has different functions relative to the different limbs of the body: a head for thinking, arms for action, feet for standing, legs for movement, and all of this that we're given some connection with this idea of Varna. But we must understand very clearly that the Hindu teachings back to the Vedas say there is only one self in all beings. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, the supreme reality you could call the divine. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, everything is Brahman, which means everything is universal. And this true self, or Purusha, transcends body and mind, birth and death, time, space, and karma. It is universal, eternal, and transcendent, and that is our common nature of all human beings, all living beings, and all existence. So we must put this so-called idea of Varna or caste in this broader context of understanding unity of the whole of life, and of course, unity of all human beings. So, having defined the traditional Hindu India basis of Varna, we must also remember that to achieve moksha, or self-realization, to become a Swami, one had to renounce all Varna, all what modern people might call caste, and all social identity and differentiation, and become, again, one with all. So what is happening now in the United States and the Western world? There's been an alliance, which is very old, with the far left. In India, it was the communists, who also took the caste issue and tried to say Hinduism is caste only, and you're confined to a caste, and there's nothing you can do except leave it. And this also was then again taken up by other anti-Hindu forces. Now, as the Hindu community has achieved a lot of success in the Western world, educationally, financially, and so forth, particularly in high tech, there has become a fair amount of resentment and jealousy for the success of the Hindus. Now, it is true that many of these Hindus who have been successful in the West have a Brahmin background. We should note today that this is more or less something nominal. Traditional Brahmin jobs did not include any such activity. They were mainly a form of service. And that in India, even the so-called Brahmin is often the poorest of the poor. The temple priests in South India are paid very, very little. They are not the political ruling group. That's other family groups or political parties. And they do not control the wealth. But today, of course, that whole caste issue or Varna issue is quite fluid in India and has been historically. So they are not these strict compartments that is put onto it. And then they are looking to the idea that, well, so-called Hindu Brahmins can have power over so-called lower caste Hindus in the working field in the Western world. That is the strategy. And then to kind of turn caste into a form of oppression and make it illegal, although Hindu Varna system and what is caste in the rest of the world can be very different. And we must also remember the colonial caste, the ruling white man, brown people not allowed, that occurred in the India context overall, that the group that is criticizing has not a lot of moral or ethical credibility, We, of course, had the idea of white supremacy, but we also had the idea of European cultural supremacy. And we now have the same thing. European cultural supremacy is trying to impose itself over the world, and both in terms of outer factors like economic or media or military power, but also in terms of their values or ethical systems, including their justice and democracy. It has a lot of great ideas. It's been very difficult in its application. In fact, democracies are divided and struggling in many countries. So it's come to distort what Hinduism is and what India is. India is rising today, and even the current Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, belongs to the backward caste. The Nehru dynasty that has ruled the country were technically Brahmins, but they weren't very good at practicing. They didn't aim at practicing the traditional role of the Brahmin. So it's kind of a smear technique. And it is not really legally based in the sense that these are undefined terms, and these are terms and issues covered by other laws. So we need to be informed about the tradition, what is happening in India, and what is the distortions in the West. The Dalits, the so-called more backward or untouchable groups, are also rising quite strongly in India. India has also reduced a lot of the social oppression, just as it's happened in many countries of the world. So we also have important Dalit leaders throughout the country, like my friend Guru Prakash, who is one of the main spokesmen for and the media. So we have to put it in a broader context and not just react and not just get emotional, but show the deeper teachings involved, honor the oneness of all humanity and all living beings, go back to the essential philosophy of yoga and Vedanta, admit there's been social oppression in India, as there is throughout the world, and may be based upon family of birth, and may be based upon religion. In fact, religious discrimination is quite extensive in the world. It may be based upon money or jobs or immigration or so many things. We need a comprehensive overall vision and view to remove social inequality and oppression, and to give equal rights, equal justice, equal opportunities to everyone. And I say equal opportunities clearly. And so this is what we have to address in dissolving caste. And there are, again, many sides and many levels, but we have a lot of resources, we have a lot of good speakers and teachers, and our view needs to get out there. The problem today is that, as we know, somebody who promotes allegations first gets attention. When these allegations are defeated down the road, they're ignored. So all these allegations have come out, and we have to have a strong voice against them, but also a strong voice against the people and their vested interests who are promoting them. And that we also need to expose if there's conversion-based motives, political-based motives, anti-India motives. We talk about Hindu phobia, and I also like to talk very directly about anti-Hindu prejudices, which are the root of Hindu phobia, and fear of the Hindus rising as immigrant communities, which they are, and fear of India rising as a nation. That being said, we also have many friends in government, society, education. There are certain groups that are against us, but we do have allies. We have other groups, other minorities, other former colonially ruled countries that have had to face similar type of oppressions. So we also need a united front, and we need to inform, be kind, be considerate, but to be determined, clear, and discerning, understanding legal, political issues, but also understanding philosophy and religion and the true greater Hindu tradition overall, and what it stood for so far in terms of yoga, Vedanta throughout the world. Buddhism is another Indic-based tradition that's gone worldwide. These have not promoted oppression, inequality, or even domination of one group or conversion. They have tried to help people understand themselves, unite as a whole, not just as a species, but honoring nature, understanding the universe, and recognizing the one consciousness that we are all manifestations of. That one consciousness will have different bodies, different minds, different functions, of course, as we do have in society. We will have different roles, but we need to honor the unity of being and consciousness behind that, and go forward with that unity to improve our lives, to improve the world of nature, and to be open to the greater abundance that the universe brings. So with these words, I will close my talk. I again thank the organizers for such a great program, and Pandit Sharmaji for all of his insight and all of his motivation and all the tremendous work that he is doing. And this very important media work, I'm happy to be part of it. I'm happy to join you again as necessary, but please take this cause forward with confidence, inspiration, motivation, but also clarity, discernment, and understanding all the vested interests that people have and that are in the world, where our interest is something higher, something uniting, and something that will raise all of humanity as well. Namaste, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Hari Om.